Good morning and welcome to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. My name is Jay Disberger, your one and only HopeFilled Financial Coach. I hope you're doing well today. I have a question for you. Have you recently or in your past ever promised your time away and laughed at the thought of how your future self was going to handle that obligation that you just made? It was something that I used to do a lot to myself when I was in college. I was studying 17 to 18 credit hours a semester, and on any given week, sitting in on 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings with executive teams and honor societies. I overextended myself something awful. And every time I said yes to another student group activity or another student group position or a tutoring opportunity, I would laugh at, oh, I'm so busy and I have all these homework assignments and tests that are coming up. I wonder how future me next week is going to deal with this, or future me a month from now is going to handle all of this coming together. The way that I would handle it, the way future me would handle it would be to shake my head and say, why past me did you overextend yourself so badly? It would cost me sleep. That was basically what I would cut out if I overextended myself. And I would do a little bit more every academic year. Freshman year, I had a wonderful sleep schedule. By the time I made it to my sixth year, though, I was writing my thesis, working with more student groups than ever, and averaging somewhere between 2 and 3 hours of sleep a night. I lived and breathed on caffeine. I had this tea that I would drink. Each tea bag was the equivalent of 2 cups of coffee. I would have at least 3 of those a day, plus maybe coffee. It got so bad that I got a cold. It was my second to last semester, and I did not sleep very well. I did not rest very well. I did not take very good care of myself. I ended up with a chronic coughing problem where I'd break out into coughing fits uncontrollably at random points, and it was really embarrassing in the middle of classes. I ended up having to go to a doctor, and the doctor basically said, "You are not resting in order to let your body heal. And as a result, your lungs are damaged and they're not able to heal until you get some sleep." I had to say no to some of my obligations. I had to back off and take care of myself and recoup in order to keep going at all. I promised my future away to the point that I could no longer take care of myself. Fortunately, I've had a better life balance and better sleeping patterns and habits ever since I graduated. If you find yourself promising your future away, it can be valuable to stop and take a step back and ask yourself if this is truly the most healthy way to be living your life and if you're enjoying it. With that in mind, let's jump into today's budget tip. For today's budget tip, if you have a miscellaneous category in your budget, which I recommend everyone should have some sort of catch all to catch the unexpected every month, there are almost always inevitably going to be little necessities that creep into your life that it's like, oh, that wasn't in the budget. We'll have to put that off till next month. And it's something small and it's something ridiculous. You should be able to take care of those things when they pop up. You should have the freedom and the flexibility to do that. A good example for me would be replacing the filter on the fridge when that annoying little red light pops up and says the filter needs replaced. Another common miscellaneous example might be you run out of garbage bags. You weren't tracking how many garbage bags you had under the sink. You just keep pulling the liners out until one day the box is empty and you don't have a liner for that kitchen trash. And you need those. The point being, a miscellaneous catch all category is important in your budget. However, if you find that your catch all category is constantly filling up month after month and it's filling up with the same thing, a predictable thing, well, it might be time to break that particular thing, whatever it may be, out from miscellaneous and give it its own predictable line in the budget. This will free up the miscellaneous category to serve the purpose that it needs to serve, filling the unknowns. If you have a known that's constantly taking it up, well, you might end up feeling you don't have the flexibility to take care of the unknown. And that's not going to give you a sense of peace, flexibility, or freedom. So today's budget tip is if you have a repeat offender who's filling up your miscellaneous category, go ahead and break out a new line item in the budget for them. With that, let's answer a question from a listener. Today, Mary asks a question. Mary says, I was talking to my 17-year-old about money market funds recently. Can a 17-year-old set up a money market fund? And is this the wisest way for her to save her money? This is a great question, and I think it's very important to be teaching our young children, our teenagers, about saving money and the value in saving money. This is going to tie in great into the main topic today. When it comes to saving and where you save your money, the first thing you have to ask yourself is what is the purpose of the money that I'm saving, and does the place that I'm considering saving that money fit the need? For example, let's say your 17-year-old is looking to save for her emergency fund. That particular savings need needs to be liquid. An emergency fund needs to be accessible for when an emergency happens. And we don't know when that's going to be. So you want to choose something that's going to give the flexibility to take the money out. A money market is basically a savings account that earns a higher interest rate and very often gives you a debit card or a checkbook in which you can cut money directly out of. It gives you immediate access, possibly too much so, but that flexibility is desirable for an emergency fund. You cannot find that kind of flexibility with a certificate of deposit. A CD is going to lock the money away and make it less liquid and make it less desirable for an emergency fund. Another good option for an emergency fund, say that your 17-year-old finds that she is spending the money from the emergency fund too easily if it's tied directly to a debit card. You might consider a high yield savings account. High yield savings accounts today can often outperform interest wise a money market account. I've seen high yield savings accounts that make more than 3 or 4% a year. Now, both a money market and a high yield savings account are going to have variable returns on their interest rates, but they're going to almost always and forever outperform a traditional savings account. And they're going to be the most low risk way to store an emergency fund. Now, let's say you're getting ready to save for a car or a wedding or college. Well, the car or the wedding are high ticket items that you would probably want to, as you're saving, keep up with inflation. A money market or a high yield savings account might be a good way to go for that. If you know when the wedding's going to be or when you need that car, and you know for sure you won't need it sooner, you might be able to get away with using a certificate of deposit that matures by the time you hit that date if the CD is going to out earn the interest and make a sizable difference in saving for that particular item in the given time that you expect. So the purpose you have behind that savings dictates the best location. Let's take a real quick special consideration for higher education savings. If you're looking to save for college or an associate's degree or a technical school or a culinary school, whatever that higher education aspiration may be, a 529 or an educational savings account may be the better way to go. Reason being is you can put that money aside, and when you pull it out, you're not going to be taxed on it. You can take a tax deduction if you're putting that money toward education and funneling it through even actively. Like, let's say your 17-year-old goes to school and actively wants to pay for tuition. You can get a tax break by having that money go through those accounts. Verify the tax benefit and any liabilities, pros and cons with a tax expert before engaging with a tax sheltered account like a 529 or an educational savings account. One of the coolest things that happened this year is if you save in a 529 and you don't use all the money for school, well, what do you do with it? Traditionally, you'd have to roll that money over to someone else in the family who would be needing to use it for college expenses for higher education, or you would take that money out and pay the taxes on it, pay the taxes on the growth and pay a penalty. Now, with the new Secured Act 2.0, you can take that money that you don't use in your 529 and roll it over into a Roth IRA for the recipient of that money. So if you were investing in a 529 for college and you overloaded it, you didn't end up spending it all, it can be a major jump start to the retirement journey for your 17-year-old. That is an incredible change and something that I'm definitely going to be taking advantage for my children. If your 17-year-old does not aspire for higher education, other means beyond the 529 or ESA are probably going to be more appropriate. You want to make sure that if college is an aspiration, that it's taken care of before saving for things like retirement, especially with the new 529 option that you have. You can prioritize saving for education, getting through education debt free, and then focus on retirement beyond that. If college is paid for and that expense is secured, that future journey is going to be possible without paying any debt. Focus on the immediate needs, like needing transportation and a car if that hasn't already been met. Beyond that, start considering savings for the future. It can be super helpful to sit down with your 17-year-old and make a savings allocation plan, list out all the goals, dreams, and aspirations that she may have, and assign each one a goal amount and a deadline date. That way, as she's saving, she can take the purpose for all the money that she wants to be saving, assign it to that purpose, and then assign that purpose to the particular account that best fits the need. Now, on to today's main topic. So last week, we covered Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad videos that were available on YouTube. And I got pretty fired up at the end of those just because Mr. Kiyosaki, at the very end, talked about how loved ones and a 401k are liabilities. And I found this to be not only irresponsible advice, but disturbing advice. And it got me so excited, so fired up in response that I forgot to conclude the concept that we were trying to review for last week's main topic, the good debt, bad debt conversation. I talked about how a mortgage is the only debt that I would endorse as a financial coach. And anything else beyond that, I would say, is being an anti frugal way to use your money. We were evaluating Robert Kiyosaki's good debt and bad debt. And in his world, a good debt, let's forget about what he says about assets and liabilities because it's so backwards and it just distorts our way of looking at the uses of our money because it disregards the importance of saving. It ignores giving entirely. It forgets about the idea that an asset adds to your net worth and a liability takes away from your net worth. And it focuses all of its energy onto the idea of your cash flow, on your paycheck. So let's ask ourselves, is good debt genuinely good? Is borrowing in order to own an income generating asset a good debt? We know that the cost of debt is interest that you pay, and then the risks that you have, risks that could otherwise siphon away the money that you need to cover your four walls, the income that you depend on for other things. For example, you have a tenant who gets kicked out and you don't have that rental property generating you income. You still have to service the debt. If you're 100% leveraged on that thing, how are you going to pay for it? And if you have to pull from what your necessities require from you, then that is a risk that I believe to be untenable. Untenable. That's funny. To fully answer the question, let's take a step back and think about debt in a different way. When you borrow money to buy something today that you otherwise can't afford, what you're effectively doing is saying, I want something now. And I want it so much so now that I am willing to pay more for it in the long run in order to have it sooner. If you carry a credit card balance, what you're effectively doing is paying interest in order to have the ability to buy something without actually having saved up for it. When you are looking at money, think about money as an exchange of value. Money is a means of exchanging your value that you create for society. That's how you generate income. Doesn't matter if you are an employee or self-employed or providing for yourself with passive income. When you have money coming to you, it is an exchange for value that you are providing to the outside world beyond your own home. In order to provide value, you need to put forth time and effort. You need to be putting forth energy. Your life is comprised of a finite amount of time. And when you borrow, Instead of saving, what you're doing is you're promising away your future time, energy, and effort in exchange for a good now, in exchange for a consumable that you want now. Effectively, as you're digging into a well of debt, you are increasingly promising your future away. Very similar to what I did in college when I kept promising I would do things in the future and building up obligations and spreading myself so thin that I no longer had freedom to do things like relax or read or even go out with friends in a way that would be relaxing and simply fun. I gave up my freedom when I did that. And if you dig yourself into a hole of debt, you're effectively selling your future time, your freedom, your life in exchange for something, a thing that you want now. In short, debt is not only the least economical way to be getting things, but it is also sacrificing your freedom, your future, and your happiness, your flexibility for the sake of stuff today. On the flip side, if you saved for something, you're exchanging the time that you've already spent providing value for something that you want. If you have already spent the time and effort doing work, providing that value, then you're simply needing to compare the different things that you could possibly spend that money on. And you're picking the thing that's going to be most valuable to you at the time that you're spending the money. This gives you a lot more control, and it doesn't promise away your freedom. This is why the number one most important number for you to be considering as you pursue a hope-filled financial future that is full of peace and freedom is your savings rate. Your savings rate is comprised of the money, the percentage of your income that you are putting aside into savings and your investments. It doesn't matter if you're investing the money in a 529, in a money market account, a high yield savings account, a taxable account, a 401k, as long as you are saving that money away, doing it in an intentional way that fits the purpose for why you are saving, the percentage of money, the percentage of that income that you're setting aside, the higher that is, the more you are effectively buying your future freedom. If you are saving money, if you're investing money, and you are building up a resource, a nest egg, if you will, that you can draw from, you're effectively buying your time back. You're freeing yourself from needing to go to work in the future so that you can do whatever it is that is most meaningful and purposeful to you. That could be spending time with your family, that could be traveling the world. If you save and invest, and not just for retirement, but in general, you don't have to wait until you retire in order to be free. If you save now, you save today, and you buy back, effectively by saving, you buy back your future, your freedom, and your time, then you don't have to go to work. You go to work because you want to, and you do the work that matters to you. You don't have to go to work because you feel forced to, or that you have to because you have promised that time away through debt. I know one thing Dave Ramsey says on this topic is the seven dwarves weren't saying, hi ho, they were saying, I owe, so off to work I go. So, in response to the idea of good debt, Robert Kiyosaki's idea of borrowing money to 100% leverage income generating assets like rental properties, what you're effectively doing is you're promising away your future time and effort that you will owe to that asset. To conclude the idea of good debt, if you are borrowing money on something to generate income for the sake of wealth itself, what you're effectively doing is promising away your future freedom, your future time, and your soul for the sake of wealth itself. This is directly contrary to the fact that if you save and you invest in genuine assets that could start providing for you better than you could with just your time and work, then you can buy back your future and give yourself a meaningful freedom. How cool would it be to do work just because you want to? You don't need to. You are provided for. You have saved to the point that you have a perpetual self sustaining future. You are financially independent. And that is a beautiful thing. That gives you the flexibility and joy to engage with the things that at the end of your life you would otherwise wish you spent more time doing. At the end of your life, would you rather people say that you were rich or that you lived a meaningful life? Benjamin Franklin made this point in a letter to his mother when he said that at his funeral, he wants people to say that he lived a useful life more so than he wants them to say that he died rich. One of the greatest wisdoms that we can take away from personal finance and our behavior and relationship with money is that the love of money is the root of all evil. If we want money for the sake of money itself, what we're going to be doing is selling our souls for the sake of it. If you want money so that you can use it as a tool to become more of who you are and free yourself for your calling, for your purpose, and you can spend time with loved ones, your savings rate is what enables you to free your time and your life to live in a way that is genuinely beautiful and free of any and all regret. So, is there such a thing as good debt and bad debt? In the context of Robert Kiyosaki's argument, I have to conclude no. Debt is debt. Debt is promising away your future. And no matter how you shake it, it is important to free ourselves from it. There's a reason why the Bible says that the borrower becomes the slave to the lender, because you're basically promising away your future so that the lender has full control over your life as opposed to you having the freedom to live. Next week on the HopeFilled Financial Podcast, what we're going to be talking about is the problem of evil. The problem of evil is something that is very interesting as it applies to money, especially with the misconception that money is the root of all evil, while genuinely speaking, it is the love of money that is the root of all evil. Until then, budget bravely and enjoy your hope-filled financial future.